Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 52 of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, Alphonse had gotten his hands onto a Philosopher's Stone, and he means to take Pride and Kimberly to task. It seems like he's in a reasonable position to do so. I feel like, if anything, Alphonse's best bet here would be to take out Kimberly, considering that he is merely human and considerably more frail than Pride. His best bet would be to just, mangle him or something so he can't really do anything. Now, this is a scene where Studio Bones, I believe they were the guys who animated this back in the day, they're really stepping up the animation. A lot of budget went into this, I'm certain, but there's all sorts of interesting action shots. There's lots of fast motion and angular things and stuff like that, Everybody is fighting seriously. So it seems like, rather than take out Kimberly first, Alphonse decided that the better idea would be to try and trap Pride again. Because I guess at the very least, once he's trapped, he can't do anything and you don't have to, actually injure him or cripple him. Maybe Alphonse has more of a moral compunction here, he can't maim Kimberly or do anything like that because he is a person, albeit a rather horrible person. Now, it's interesting that Kimberly has decided to try and, pick him apart here. It's you have the stone. Why didn't you just leave? You can fix your bodies with that. And it seems to me more that Kimberly is fundamentally misunderstanding the Elric brothers. The whole idea is that they didn't really want to use a stone to begin with because it would be monstrous. So, even if they're given a stone, they're sort of invested on putting an end to this evil conspiracy. So, I feel like Kimberly just suggesting that they're stupid to not run away, he really doesn't get it. And I guess that's kind of fair, considering that he seems to be a sociopath or a psychopath or something like that. Somebody who doesn't really fit in with human society and understand how other humans think. Oh. Oh dear. So, Kimberly is only now revealing that he does in fact have a Philosopher's Stone. I didn't realize he didn't make that clear right out of the gate, so I guess it makes sense that Alphonse would have left him alone, given that he's perceivably the smaller threat. Now, fortunately for the Armstrong siblings, their teamwork seems to be enough to sort of injure Sloth and get the better of him. You know, even though Major Armstrong has presumably had a bunch of ribs cracked, she's still moving around with rather astonishing dexterity. Wow, that's an unfortunate revelation. That the only reason Sloth hasn't crushed them all is because he's too lazy to do it, and that he can fight far more effectively than he currently has been. Wow. Yeah, teleport's behind you, nothing personal, kid. Sloth isn't playing around anymore. Feel sorry for those two soldiers because they're probably little more than pulp now. Alright, I guess the upside of all of this is that, despite being incredibly fast, Sloth is seemingly too lazy to aim properly. And he just sort of willy-nilly collides into the wall rather than hit his target. So that's interesting. You know, Sloth is sort of bragging about how he's the fastest homunculi, or homunculus of them all. Because it seems like each of the homunculi have some aspect or talent or something like that. And for Sloth to be the fastest, that's... I don't know. That's not obvious that that should be his big talent. Because, you know, based on his stature, I would immediately think strongest, at least in terms of raw physical strength. And, you know, that might be true as well. But yeah, I don't think he really has much competition in that category. So Alphonse has decided that perhaps he's going to have to be a little bit more clever when dealing with Pride and Kimberly now. Unfortunately, though, it seems like all the tricks he's trying aren't really working. You know, Pride can seemingly follow him by smell now. So this is kind of interesting. Alphonse is sort of chastising Pride about not giving humanity enough credit for their ingenuity. I know this is something Kimberly has touched on before, that, you know, he's less invested in the homunculi or humanity. He just wants to see who wins this battle for survival, and he'll side with the winner. So I feel like, albeit inadvertently, Alphonse is kind of going to sway Kimberly to his side by saying, you know, hey, humanity's not down and out just yet. We have these spectacular brains and we like to think. Although, it seems like Kimberly may not actually live to see the ultimate outcome, considering he just got bitten on the neck pretty harshly by Heinkel. I mean, like, you know, if you rupture the jugular vein, I believe it's a vein, not an artery, you know, he's got, like, what, 30 seconds of life left? I mean, it couldn't happen to a more deserving person than Kimberly, but still, it's pretty nasty business. Now, back with Mustang, they have in fact snuck back into Central by disguising the van. But I feel like... I don't know. Their disguise is just sort of like... slightly different. Like, yeah, it's not an ice cream truck anymore, at least not by looking at it. But it's like the same kind of like cartoonish mascot and all that business. So I feel like, you know, a competent soldier on guard duty might wonder, like, hey, we're dealing with Mustang here. He's been known to do some thinking from time to time. This truck kind of matches the description. Maybe we should stop it to be thorough. You know, perhaps I'm nitpicking a little bit, but, you know, given how good Fullmetal Alchemist is in general, sometimes you have to break out the tweezers. Now, back with this Immortal Legion, it really seems like they haven't done too much more than slowly advance. Fortunately, it seems like they're kinda stupid, which allows Edward and company to effectively incapacitate them by immobilizing them or crippling their legs. I guess the idea is if they just crawl around, they're much easier to keep ahead of. I mean, I feel like that's not a permanent solution. If they can regenerate, then surely they will. But I guess maybe it's more of a tactic to buy time rather than anything else. You know, I have to wonder if Major General Armstrong is gaining a bit of respect for her younger brother, considering that he really put himself in harm's way and received a little injury for his trouble. I have to say, it was rather respectful of him to sort of dive in front of Sloth as he did. And not only did he do that, he managed to sort of stop him in his tracks. So things are getting real serious. Major General Armstrong, I'm sure she's injured pretty badly. You know, Sloth had to have at least cracked her ribs earlier, if not broken a few. I mean, she can't really be counted on to do much, so it's all on Alex to hold things together. Alright, this is interesting. Pride is actually holding off on skewering Kimblee. I have to wonder why, because Kimblee seems to be reasonably expendable in the grand scheme of things. Like, he's not a sacrifice, is he? If he was, then surely Pride should be doing everything he can to preserve his life. I mean, considering what's going on, like, he's just been, like, bit through the neck by a chimera. Surely death is imminent for him. Ooh. Now, I have to imagine that that doesn't feel pretty good, just being sort of hit by a car like that. There we go. Yoki's finally pulling his weight here. You know, it wasn't exactly an extreme act of bravery here, just sort of driving up in the car and hitting somebody with it, but, you know, baby steps, I guess. Yoki is not exactly blessed by an abundance of courage, so what little he can bring to bear is certainly something. Yeah, well, things are looking up a little bit. I feel if they were to be particularly intelligent about this, they would get out of Dodge as soon as possible. You know, it's a fool's errand messing with Pride any more than you have to, so you might as well just get out while the getting's good. Especially considering They now have a Philosopher's Stone in tow. So I'm wondering where this leaves Pride exactly. Because obviously he's going to be a major factor in the goings-on from now on. But at the same time, he's kind of stranded out in the middle of nowhere. Like, what kind of transport is he going to have to get back to Central? Because I'd imagine he'd be needed there ASAP. Yeah, you know, Kimblee, despite being still alive, he's not long for this world, you know, he's bleeding pretty badly. I find it somewhat distasteful that Pride's just sort of standing over him and gloating almost. It's like, you know, like, oh, you're a human, you die. Better luck next time, bozo. Oh, no. Yeah, it seems like he's taken on a few more aspects of gluttony than just the ability to detect things by sense of smell. You know, it seems like he's not going to let a good corpse go to waste. I'd imagine this is particularly galling for Kimblee, considering he wanted to see essentially the outcome of this battle between man and monster. And Pride's sort of reassuring him like, oh, you'll live on through me as a trapped soul. You know, small comfort, I'm sure. Alright, so this is interesting. You know, the Major General's just sort of like waking up and... wow. It seems as though Major Armstrong managed to destroy Sloth rather effectively. Like, oh gosh, that reminds me of this one scene from the end of Hot Fuzz when Timothy Dalton's character lands on a miniature replica of a church spire. Oh, rather disgusting. So, despite all of this, you know, defeating Sloth rather messily, all these Central soldiers are just poised to kill the Armstrong siblings. I mean, to be fair, I guess that's their prerogative. It's sort of in line with their standing orders, but at the same time, you know, there was a better than decent chance that Sloth would have pulped them as collateral damage. Fortunately for the Armstrong siblings, it seems like the cavalry is in the process of arriving. Although it's not distinctly on their side, it's more just the Immortal Legion coming to butcher anyone and everyone in their path. You know, as with before, the soldiers aren't really learning too much, because, you know, yeah, they shoot these guys and they go down. But then they get back up, and rather than doing something practical, like shooting them again or leaving, they just sort of stand there and gawp. And I mean, to be fair, that's a pretty horrifying thing to witness. So it's interesting that this guy, presumably some sort of non-commissioned officer, doesn't know anything about the Immortal Legion. You know, he's just as in the dark as everyone else, which really doesn't bode well for his future. Because if he doesn't die to the Immortal Legion, he's certainly going to die in the bigger ritual. Man, that is just so disgusting how the bone reforms followed by the muscle and skin, but it's so cool too. Because it looks like there's actual like, actual anatomy that went into that, like an understanding of how the bones of the hand go together and how the muscles form. So the Major General's not playing, you know. Like, this guy's staring down death, and she's basically saying, you know, either kill me or, like, start doing something practical here. We don't have time to mess around. I admire her determination. So I feel like Envy, in his overconfidence, is giving Mei Chang a bit of information here. Like, each one of these mannequin soldiers, as he calls them, are infused with the Philosopher's Stone. So I feel like, you know, yeah, she might not be able to kill them, but, you know, you might have given her another opportunity to take a Philosopher's Stone. You know, it's nice that she's still determined to try and find some method of immortality, even though every method presented so far is inherently monstrous. I mean, I don't know how successful she's really gonna be, but I can respect the determination if nothing else. Although I do have to wonder precisely how many souls are stuffed in each one of these mannequin soldiers, considering how much effort it actually takes to put one of them down for good. Because, you know, if there's like a legion of like a couple hundred, that could mean as many as like several thousands of souls have gone into making them. And that's a rather horrifying proposal. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.